Hi, thanks for watching. This is Jessie, and I am going to be reviewing Wild is the Witch and the Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. So I bought The Nature of Witches a while back. I had it on my to-read list. It sounded like something that I would enjoy, but I never got around to reading it. And then NetGalley gave me an EARC of Wild is the Witch, and I read that, and I enjoyed it. It follows Iris, who, along with her mother, have moved away from their home where they were staying with her father, with Iris's father, because Iris went with her friend and her friend's boyfriend to a cabin on the beach, and she was not aware of the plans that they had. So her friend attempted to turn her boyfriend into a mage, and this is illegal in the witch community because it has such devastating ramifications. So when somebody who is not a witch is first turned into a witch, they are overwhelmed by the amount of magic that is around them, and they try to draw in too much at once, essentially burning themselves up, and that is how her friend's boyfriend died. He burned to death. So they're sent to the Witches' Council. Her friend is stripped of her magic powers and sent to prison. And Iris is cleared of any wrongdoing because she was asleep at the time. She actually woke up to the boyfriend's screaming, and she ran, but there was nothing that they could do because he was already gone. So after this, and at this point, there's a tentative relationship between non-witches and witches. They live together fine until something like this happens, and then you can imagine that non-witches are looking at witches like they're more dangerous than the non-witches normally give them credit for, since they've been living together. And people start to look at Iris differently, and eventually the family, Iris, her mother, and her father, make plans to move, and they're planning to move to the Pacific Northwest. But when it comes time to move, Iris's father, he doesn't move with them. He doesn't want to move away from the place that he's come to consider home. And in addition to that, raising a witch daughter has become more than he can handle. So Iris and her mom move across the country, and they set up stake at the edge of a forest where they run a animal, like an animal hospital, an animal rescue facility, and everything's going fine. Now at this point, Iris doesn't want anybody to know that she's a witch. She hides her magic. She doesn't tell anybody about it. She asks her mom also not to tell anybody that they're witches, and her mom, while she doesn't agree with her, kind of keeps their secret for her daughter so that she's comfortable. And there's a lot going on, like on the sidelines of the magic. So you have the mom who has reconnected with an old friend, and this woman used to be her best friend, and they are falling in love. And Iris sees it. She's really happy for her mom, but at the same time, they have hired an intern at the animal rescue place that they run named Pike. Now, Pike has made it clear on multiple occasions that he doesn't like witches. He doesn't like magic. He specifically says when they see that her friend is being released from prison, he says she should have been the one to burn. So Iris kind of freaks out. She thinks that Pike is going to cause a problem for her and her mom, and they're eventually going to get run out of the place that they've come to love. And she tells her mom this, but her mom kind of laughs it off. One of the things that Iris's grandmother taught her was, if you feel like you need to do a spell that is illegal, or a spell that you don't intend to release, but in order to get through your emotional state of mind and get over the situation, create the spell and put it in some herbs, like wrapped together in a cord or twine, and bury it. And it releases the tension in the witch, and it also releases the spell into the herbs, and it's harmless. So Iris decides that she's going to curse Pike, who is the intern, with being a mage. But her intention is to put it into the herbs. So she creates this little packet of herbs and she does the curse. But right as she's sending the curse to the herbs, an owl flies in between her and the herbs, catches the curse, and flies off. This isn't any ordinary owl. This particular owl has the ability to amplify magic. So whatever the witches do, whether it's just a regular spell or a curse or whatever it is, this owl amplifies it. And so if it's released, not only would it curse Pike, but it would curse anybody within probably a couple 100 miles and kill a lot of them, because like what happened with her friend's boyfriend, if they're turned into mages, they have to be able to control taking in too much magic or they die. So she is crazed with worry that this is going to get out, because she never intended to actually curse Pike. She just wanted to be able to relieve the fear that he was going to give her and her mother away. So she tells her mom she's going to go after the owl, and her mom is like, I'm not comfortable with you going out into these mountains and woods by yourself. Take Pike with you, because he wants to be an ornithologist anyway. And she's like, no, I really don't want to do that. And her mom's like, you don't have a choice. Either you're going to take Pike with you or you're not going to go look for this owl. So she convinces Pike to go with her, and they're searching the woods for this owl, and they're getting closer, and she can't tell him that the reason they're looking for this owl is because it's carrying a curse for Pike. And so you can kind of guess where the story goes. But sorry, my internet service provider was calling back. We've been having issues because apparently the rain caused the satellite to go wrong. I don't know. It doesn't matter. So you can imagine how this ends up with Iris and Pike and everything that's going on with the owl. It was a really fun read. I enjoyed it. I got through it rather quickly. And after I finished it, I decided, let me go read The Nature of Witches, because I like the magical realism, the witchiness of this book. It's along the lines of Alice Hoffman and Sarah Addison Allen, who are two of my favorite magical realism authors. So I started reading The Nature of Witches, and at first I thought, oh no, not another woe is me, I hate my magic hates me story. We start with Clara. Clara has actually, her magic sought out her parents, and her parents died. And later on, her magic sought out her best friend, Nikki, and Nikki died. Now, at the time, she was dating this girl named Paige, and after Nikki died, she thought, let me break up with Paige, because I don't want anything to happen to Paige, because I love her so much. And so it starts with this, I don't want my magic. I would rather lose my magic than hurt anybody else kind of thing. But it quickly became apparent that it wasn't the same story. So I was so happy about that. So the magic system is different. Instead of pulling the magic from like the trees, the ground, the rocks, the flowers that are around you, like in Wild of the Witch, this one, the magic comes from the sun. Now the witches have to have access to the sun in some way in order for them to stay witches. Now there's a solar eclipse that's coming up, and at this point Clara is kind of thinking that she's going to stay for the solar eclipse instead of evacuating the area where the full totality is going to be, the path of totality. Witches are supposed to evacuate the path of totality in order to avoid being stripped of their magic. But Clara thinks, if I strip myself of my magic, there's no danger in me hurting anybody else. And you can kind of understand at this point, I mean, she lost her parents to her magic, and then she lost her best friend to her magic. It was pretty traumatic and devastating. But Clara is an Everwitch. Normal witches are the season that they're born in. So if you're born in autumn, you're an autumn witch. If you're born in winter, you're a winter witch. And all of the different seasons have specific strengths and abilities, but when you're not in your season, your magic is weakened significantly to the point where, I mean, it's not even a quarter of the magic that you have when you're in season. Clara, being an Everwitch, changes with the seasons. Even though she was born in autumn, once autumn changes to winter, she becomes a winter witch. Once winter changes to spring, she becomes a spring witch. And the faculty at the school, first of all, are thrilled to have an Everwitch on in their students, because she's the first Everwitch in a long time. I think it's maybe like 100 or 200 years. And there's this one teacher in particular, Mr. Hart, who really believes in Clara. He thinks that if he can get through her mental block that's keeping her from realizing her full potential, that she can save other witches from depletion. And depletion is where the witch uses so much of their magical resources that it ends up killing them. Now, the reason that this is happening is, and this is where it gets really interesting for me. So this is in the future where witches and non-witches live together, and climate is everything. The natural resources of the planet have been used beyond what they were ever meant to be. And you have this global warming thing that's going on, and crazy storms that are happening everywhere. You have wildfires, you have monsoons where they're not supposed to be, or monsoons out of season. You have hailstorms and blizzards in seasons that they're not supposed to be, and it goes on from there. And there's this part in the book where there's a tornado that's going through near the school, and at that moment, I think, is when I added Rachel Griffin to my favorite authors of magical realism, right next to Alice Hoffman and Sarah Addison Allen, because the description, the imagery of these storms in this book was absolutely stunning. And then the magic next to this cli-fi kind of genre going on was, I didn't realize that this was something I needed until I read this book, but I need more of this. I need more magical realism, cli-fi, witchy drama. I really do. So I need you to write more of your books, Rachel Griffin. I need other authors to also write witchy magical realism cli-fi for me. Please and thank you. So there's another teacher, Mr. Barrows, who is not only disappointed in Clara, but he's making it clear that he's disappointed in Clara, and he's pushing her to break through whatever it is that's keeping her from realizing her full potential, and just do what she needs to do to save the witches and save the earth and be the Everwitch that she was meant to be. And he brings in a student from another school of witches, and his name is Sang. And at first, Clara's offended. She's like, you're bringing in another student from another place who's not even an Everwitch to teach me how to be an Everwitch. And she's offended at first, but slowly her and Sang form more than a friendship. And his magic, he's a spring, and his magic is really impressive. He can make flowers out of just emotion. So he starts this field up on the top of a mountain, and like he goes and he puts his emotions in there, his anger, his frustration, his joy, his love, his everything into these flowers. And so you have a million different flowers in this field, which was pretty cool. And so he's trying to teach what he knows to Clara. They're getting closer. And then at one point, he pushes her too far. She gets so frustrated with him, and they start fighting with their magic. And so he's flinging magic at her, and she's flinging magic at him. And all of a sudden, something happens where she's pulling his magic from him. And this is something that's never happened before. And so I don't want to ruin the book for you, because it gets really interesting from there. I adored this book. I thought this was better than Wild as the Witch, and I obviously enjoyed Wild as the Witch so much that I went and started reading Nature of Witches. So I highly recommend Rachel Griffin. These are the only two books that I was able to find by her so far. I think she has maybe some short stories and some anthologies or something, but I am really looking forward to more from her. I enjoy the different variations of magic systems that she creates. I enjoy the magical realism of it all. Like, you know, it's as if they were always there. There was obviously a time where witches and non-witches didn't get along, but in her books at this point, they are cohabitating places. You know, there's not like a place for witches and a place for non-witches, and they're both like that. They're YA-ish, I want to say, even though neither one of the main characters in these books were teens. But I think that it does have some YA vibes, especially when it comes to like the romance aspect of it. But that really doesn't take away from the books themselves. They're fantastic. And if you like Alice Hoffman, if you like Sarah Addison Allen, maybe Sarah Addison Allen a little bit more than Alice Hoffman, because Alice Hoffman gets a little dark at times. But if you like the vein of those books, then I absolutely recommend Rachel Griffin for you. And I am so thankful for getting that EARC from NetGalley of Wild as the Witch, because I don't know how long it would have been before I read The Nature of Witches. And that is up there. I have to admit, being magical realism, witchy, and cli-fi, that is up there in my favorite books. So I hope you read it. If you've read Rachel Griffin before, let me know what you think. I know that, you know, there's probably some aspect or another that is probably going to not be people's forte, and that's probably going to be the YA aspect of it, unless you regularly read YA books. But I really recommend these books if you do like those other authors. So, but let me know what you're reading in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching.